Everyone knew it. The Vera Collective had swept across the Orion Arm like a swarm of locusts made of black glass and plasma. Their ships didn't fight battles. They deleted them. Entire fleets vanished inside expanding spheres of nullite. Planets cracked open under gravitic lances that weighed more than moons. Earth's last defensive line, the Sol perimeter, had fallen 3 weeks ago. Mars was a glowing scar. Luna had been shattered into rings. The remnant governments broadcast surrender terms from hidden bunkers, but the Vera didn't answer. They didn't take prisoners. They took silence. In a forgotten asteroid habitat called Ceres 9, deep inside the rubble belt humanity once mined for water, 37 scientists and one half-mad admiral prepared to do the only thing left. They turned on the anomaly generator. Dr. Mara Solari remembered the moment the lights came on. The chamber was a sphere 2 kilometers across, carved out of nickel iron and lined with coils the size of skyscrapers. At its heart floated a single black tetrahedron no larger than a coffin, the generator itself. When the final sequence locked, the tetrahedron unfolded along dimensions no one had names for. Reality hiccuped. The air tasted like copper and déjà vu. Admiral Jean Kyung-soo, missing his left arm from the Battle of Kepler, 438, stood on the observation gantry and spoke the words history would remember. Let's cheat. Phase 1 began at 1942 Universal Time Coordinated, October 17, 2487. The generator didn't open a wormhole. It didn't bend space. It did something worse. It convinced local space-time that the laws of physics were negotiable. The first symptom was time dilation that went the wrong way. Clocks inside Ceres 9 began running faster than the outside universe. 1 minute inside the sphere equaled roughly 0.73 seconds outside. The engineers called it subjective overclocking. Mara called it mercy. It meant they had years to work while the Vera took hours to cross the Kuiper belt. They used the borrowed time ruthlessly. Phase 2 required a volunteer. Someone had to ride the anomaly wave outward and seed the solar system with echoes, quantum ghosts of human ships that had never actually existed. The echoes would fight like the real thing, bleed like the real thing, and die like the real thing, all without costing a single actual life. They chose Lieutenant Commander Elias Winter, call sign Ghost 1, because he had already died once. During the fall of Titan, he'd been declared Kia when his fighter was vaporized. Search and rescue found him 3 days later drifting in a pod with no air, no power, and a heartbeat. No one understood how he survived. Elias said he'd simply refused the paperwork. He kissed Mara goodbye in the launch bay, a quick, fierce thing that tasted like ozone and fear, then climbed into the needle-shaped probe they'd nicknamed Schrödinger's dagger. The dagger was little more than an engine, a cockpit, and the smallest anomaly core they could carve from the generator. Mara watched the bay door's iris open onto raw starlight. "Try not to rewrite yourself out of existence," she said over comms. "No promises," Elias replied, and fired the core. The dagger vanished, not in a flash, but in a stutter, like film with frames torn out. One moment it was there, the next it had always been somewhere else. Outside, the Vera Armada entered the ecliptic plane. 12,000 cathedral-hull warships shaped like obsidian nautiluses, each one large enough to cast its own shadow across Jupiter. Their formation was perfect, inevitable, final. Then the echoes arrived. 10,000 human ships, sleek lances of white ceramic and gold, designs no yard had ever built, dropped out of nowhere and opened fire. Rail spirals tore through Vera shields like tissue. Missiles that shouldn't exist detonated in cascades of impossible colors. The Vera responded with nullite, deleting hundreds of echoes per second, but for every ghost destroyed, 2 more flickered into being somewhere else. The Battle of the False Fleet lasted 6 real-time minutes and 32 subjective years. Inside Ceres 9, the team watched the war on accelerated feeds. They aged. They lost teeth. They grew old while the rest of humanity still had hours to live. Mara's hair went iron gray. Admiral Jin's prosthetic arm rusted and was replaced twice. They refined the generator, pushing Phase 3, retrocausal anchoring. If they could convince the timeline that humanity had always possessed the generator, the Vera would be fighting a war they had already lost in every possible past. The math was elegant and obscene. It required a sacrifice. Someone had to become the anchor, a living fixed point. The moment they accepted the role, every version of them that ever existed or would exist would collapse into one continuous scream of identity. There was no coming back. Elias volunteered again. He sent a single transmission from wherever the dagger had taken him. I already died once. Let me do it properly this time. They accepted. On the day the Vera reached the orbit of Saturn, the generator sang a note no human ear was built to hear. Reality rewrote itself in a wave that propagated backward and forward simultaneously. Suddenly, humanity had always owned the anomaly generator. Suddenly, the Vera had lost the war before they declared it. The change was subtle at first. Vera ships began suffering catastrophic drive failures that maintenance logs insisted had been scheduled for centuries. Their perfect formations developed gaps where vessels had always been destroyed in battles no one remembered fighting. Crews woke up speaking languages that had died out 200 years earlier. In the present that now remembered victory, children on refugee arcs grew up hearing bedtime stories about the day the sky turned gold and the enemy simply forgot how to win. But there are always edges where the rewrite didn't take perfectly. Mara Solari, now in her biological 40s but chronologically 209, walked the surface of a rebuilt Luna in a pressure suit stitched with the names of everyone who had lived inside the overclock. She carried a small black cube in her pocket, the dormant heart of the generator, retired after the anchoring. She found Elias sitting on the rim of Plato Crater, legs dangling over a drop that fell 50 kilometers into darkness. He looked exactly as he had the day he left, 34 years old, dark hair, faint radiation scars across his cheekbones. He shouldn't have been able to look that young. The anchoring should have burned him out of time entirely. You weren't supposed to come back, she said. I know, he answered. His voice carried the weight of every timeline he'd collapsed. But someone had to make sure the story had an ending. Below them, Earth turned blue again. Cities glittered like new constellations. The Vera were gone, not destroyed, simply edited out of consequence, like a paragraph deleted from history's draft. Mara sat beside him. The silence between them was older than stars. Do you remember dying? She asked. I remember every version, Elias said. In one of them we lost. In most of them, actually. You and I grew old inside Series 9 and died before the anchoring finished. In another, I never came home, and you spent the rest of your life waiting for a ghost. This timeline, this one's the anomaly. He reached over and took her hand. His fingers were warm. Real. I had to choose which story was worth keeping, he whispered. I picked the one where you got to see the sky again. Mara felt the weight of 2 centuries settle into her bones. She thought of the 37 scientists who never left the overclock, of Admiral Jean who shot himself the day the rewrite completed because he could no longer remember his daughter's name, of the billions who would never know how close the abyss had come. She looked at Elias, at the man who had become the fixed point holding reality together, and asked the only question left. Was it worth it? He considered the blue marble rising over the crater's edge. Ask me in 1,000 years, he said. They sat there until lunar dawn painted the regolith gold, 2 people carrying the memory of a war that now only existed in the spaces between heartbeats. And somewhere, deep inside the dormant black cube in Mara's pocket, the anomaly generator waited, silent, satisfied, and dreaming of the next time reality would need cheating. Because wars are never truly over. They just learn better places to hide.